Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. Hello there. This is a very special edition due to this contraption we have here, kindly donated to us. We're looking at all the awful albums. But are they awful albums? We've got a little bit of a theme of the Sellout album, but not for all the albums we're doing. It's just a selection of stuff that, we're not going to do that, are we? Why would you do that? So yeah, shall we begin?
Let's begin.
First on the agenda is this wonderful piece of artifact here, Ummagumma by Pink Floyd, or Ummagumma. The band seems to say Ummagumma strangely, so the band say it with a Brummie accent and we don't.
Ummagumma. I think I'm pretty Brummie on it.
Ummagumma.
Ummagumma.
Or maybe they say it the same way we say it. I don't know, because they say yes, when we were making Ummagumma. I don't know. But yeah, the done Source of All. Sid was definitely out of the picture. Done a solo album. They got the offer to do a film soundtrack to more because their last three singles had flopped. I don't know if that was the idea that the record company were thinking, well, let's push them in that direction. And I think that was a mistake because there's a couple of good things on the More soundtrack. You've got Cymbeline and you've got Green is the Colour as well, which are really nice songs, which I suspect have a lot of Gilmour influence, interestingly. But they, for whatever reason, decided not to use those things for their own album. But they did construct this enormous double concept album as a show called The Man and the Journey, or The Masked Gadgets of Oxymenes, or whatever it's called. But instead of doing that, they decided, no, forget that, we'll just put a live album on one side and then we'll just fart around on the other side. And the idea is just to give half an album side to each band member in Pink Floyd. This is not a good idea. And the question is, does it go into 101, the box 101 box? Because the live album's awesome. It is an awesome live album. It is fantastic. And if you haven't got Live at Pompeii, or if you don't count Live at Pompeii as a live album, this is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Astronomy Domini, long cover with that axe, set the controls, Source Full of Secrets, with the bits on the end, which isn't on the album. So it's wonderful. But the studio album, it just seems to be the worst stuff they've ever done. I think it's just garbage. I mean, they were doing good stuff at the time. I don't understand what happened. It seems that they locked themselves in the studio and, right, let's do it, let's make the album. I think it's pretentious, some of it. I think it has no structure whatsoever. I think it's boring. It is four separate things though, isn't it? Sisyphus, I believe is spelt wrong. I think it's S-I. Completely forgettable Rick Wright's organ extravaganza. He himself was very dismissive as well. It's just forgettable, isn't it? It's just. Then you've got Roger Waters' section, which should be the best section. And of course we've got Grantchester Meadows. Roger Waters' classic. I think it's the most boring song ever written. It just goes round and round and round. And then you've got several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a Pict. Great title. And this is the Roger Waters doing his shouty Scottish stuff, which is funny, but you wouldn't listen to it more than once. So that's the best 10 minutes of the album. Gilmour's side, he's as forgettable as Rick Wright's side. He had no structure to it at all. To make it a 3-part guitar odyssey of forgettable bits. And of course we have Nick Mason's 10 minutes. The Grand Vizier's Garden Party. It is just rubbish. I think it is absolute rubbish. And it's so bad. My argument is that goes into the 101 box, even though the live album is great, because it was such a bad call for them to do that and not record The Man and the Journey. I say it goes in.
Well, maybe I should put a counter argument to that then. Although I largely agree on the second album, and the first album is fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really nice. The counter argument is Pink Floyd have done everything wrong all at once, so they can then go on and actually think, well, we know what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Let's go and do what does work. And there's a chance that had they not done this and got it out their system, that it would keep bubbling up and resurfacing where, the idea of giving everyone a shot. When music realistically works better when there's a distillation of ideas. So it goes through several filters, band members, and only the really good stuff gets through. So by separating it out into four separate little projects, it loses that, and that's probably why it fails.
Yeah, possibly they haven't got Roger Waters shouting at them.
But it's not. You can say it's structured wrong and the music itself is crap, but there's definitely a yearning towards big ideas that is the staple of the good Pink Floyd stuff.
Yeah.
It's only Roger Waters that could really pull it off. But this would help them fall behind that. You can say, well, you all want to do this. Obviously, you all want to do this because that's you've got 4-part. They've all done multi-part pieces of music, like. So come on, we want to do it. This is good. Let's rally behind it. Maybe, I don't know.
Because the weird thing is how good Saucer Full of Secrets is. Yeah. Sid's only got one song on there. I think Nick Mason did acknowledge. I might have made this up. It might be just my opinion, but that was the right direction. Actually, the stuff on there was pointing in the right direction, and this was pointing off into bollocks.
But, I mean, it is the buffer between the Syd Barrett Pink Floyd, the Pink Floyd, and Roger Waters / Dave Gilmour Pink Floyd, and it's a good buffer because
because you'll never touch it.
You'll never touch it, no.
But yeah, the live album is great. We'll have to leave it up to Hector.
I am Hector the prog god. Ummagumma goes into room 101.
Yeah, so Hector said no, so I can do this.
Room 101.
Right, the next album, we thought we'd do another Pink Floyd album. I don't own, so there's this blank CDR. Is going to go there for this one. Okay, this is Momentary Lapse of Reason. The next album after the final cut. This is the sellout album. Like Let's Dance and like 90125 and all those albums where bands tried to be very, very commercial and sell out. And of course, it didn't have to happen as part of the creative process. It happened through necessity because obviously the writer had left. The conceptual writer who worked on 95% of everything had left. They had to do something different, and it was Dave Gilmour that wanted to do it. Whether it was to prove a point or whatever it was. The reason behind it really was that his solo album didn't sell much. I think Pros and Cons did okay, but not fantastic. Gilmour's solo album sold next to nothing. So he decided to pursue, well, I'm still in Pink Floyd then. I can have Pink Floyd, so he did. And it was not an easy ride to make. And they now acknowledge, yes, it was a Gilmour solo album and it was a bit of a con, really. The songs just aren't there, regardless of who made it. There's a couple of things on there, and a lot of crap. There's one instrumental that's very nice, Terminal Frost, but obviously the 80s-ness kind of even spoils that, And you got Sorrow, which is a nice guitar solo, but not really a song.
No.
And it has that same Gilmour sort of chanting melody he does.
Yeah.
He does on everything.
Yeah, it's almost like it tips its hat towards Pink Floyd with the sort of sprinkling of Pink Floyd-y type things without actually being Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, apparently I can see the problem, that Gilmour just couldn't just put his songs on it because it wouldn't sound like Pink Floyd. And that apparently they had a chat with the record company who were not happy. They'd given them all the advance and everything, and what was coming out wasn't sounding like Pink Floyd. Now, like Pink Floyd could mean a lot of things, but what they meant was Dark Side and Wish You Were Here.
Yeah.
That's what they meant. So they had to sort of put this washes of keyboard and stuff and make it like an 80s booming drums, tinny version of that kind of sound. But it means there just aren't the songs aren't there.
However, it did allow the Pink Floyd to go around touring
which
stuff
wonderful.
that we do like.
Which was wonderful.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if Roger Waters is there, unless they're doing the wall. It doesn't matter if he's there, does he? They don't need him playing bass on money, do they?
That's right, yeah.
It's probably slightly better if they get someone else.
So there is the danger, if you put this into Room 101, you lose a decade and a bit of touring.
Yeah, and 2 great live albums, particularly Pulse.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
My opinion is that other one is better. And there was an effort to make it a band album. Obviously they did that thing where they jammed together, but they didn't really use any of it. They just stuck Gilmour songs on there and one Rick Wright song.
Yeah.
But it's better than this one. And again, the tour was better, I think. So does it go in? I think it does.
Yeah.
Momentary lapse of reason goes into room 101.
Are any albums going to survive this call?
I think they will eventually.
I mean, we put 2 Pink Floyd albums into Room 101.
I think it's their 2 worst albums by quite a margin. Right, the next one we're going to do is Metallica.
Right.
So a bit of a jump from there. The Load album. Now, once again, I don't own Load, it's rubbish. So that's the single of The Memory Remains.
Which is
which is pretty good actually, but it's not on load. It's actually better than anything on load, as it turns out. Yeah, so this is obviously their follow-up to the Black Album, the Manly Man rock album. And what did they do? I mean, they've become massively successful. And it didn't matter what they did, it was going to be huge. It's probably one of their biggest selling albums. Or certainly within the first 6 months of release of their albums. I bet it's one of their biggest selling. Because the industry was at its biggest, and they've reached their commercial zenith. And the question was, what are they going to do next? And they've kind of done they have done a sellout album in the Black Album. It is Poodle Rock meets thrash, which is a good album, brilliant album, So what do they do next? And what they do next is a kind of stripped down, rougher, bluesier thing. So they're not doing the very tight thrash. They've moved further away from thrash. So it is the logical extension of where they were going. It is completely forgettable. They did enough stuff for 2 albums. There's an 80-minute album. This is an 80-minute album. And they still managed to get enough stuff for 2 albums. But why didn't they just choose the best stuff? 50 minutes of the best stuff. It does seem to me now, I haven't listened to Reload for 20 years. Has it been out for 20 years? Or whatever, however many years. It seems to me Reload is much better.
Yeah, I think you're right. Bit more memorable.
Yeah, whereas Load, it's just this dreary, forgettable, very 90s. They were obviously being very astute, I think, because it was very zeitgeisty of the time. But it really shows up their limitations as musicians when they're not playing that very precise, tight, fast thrash stuff. You realise they're not great players at all. I mean, we kind of already knew, what's his name? Lars, out of his comfort zone. He's not a great drummer, and you can hear it on the Black Album. And on here, it's exacerbated by the lo-fi approach, but also Kirk Hammett. It's all bendy and and that's showed up his limitations as well. When he's not doing thrash, he's very limited, and he's not even Dave Murray or any Iron Maiden guitarist. He's not even up to that standard really, which is disappointing. But again, the songs aren't there. That's what it comes down to. The songs, they're just forgettable.
I'm not as big a Metallica hater as you, Kev. I acknowledge that this is a very average album, and it was. You think at the time, well, Guns N' Roses, they released Use Your Illusion 1 and Use Your Illusion 2, making fans pay twice because they put everything out. They didn't distill it down into an album, whereas Metallica didn't do that. It is one album. It is 80 minutes of averageness, and there is a sense that they are milking the cow, almost.
Yeah.
There is a sort of a glee about this album. They're sort of they've figured out a way of printing money, basically.
Yeah.
And they're gonna play to that, but they are caught in a situation where the music they make doesn't sit well for MTV, and we are sort of getting into MTV ruling the world.
Yeah.
With regards to music, and obviously this is a little bit of a reaction to that, but it's still it is still about the music, yeah. They are a hard-working touring band, essentially, that enjoy the music that they play and write, and that is still there largely.
Yeah, it sounds like Metallica,
yeah. And I think you shouldn't lose sight of that. There could have been the temptation there to go on a massive tour with massive amount of pyrotechnics and massive, special effects on stage and stuff like that. And they didn't do that. They literally say, well, we go play music and we play live. It's 4 guys on the band. We're not getting like a million backing singers up here or anything like that. It's just going to be 4 guys, and it's going to be about the music. And it turns out that the music they're writing is not particularly good at the time.
You think about what happened to the riffs.
Yeah.
You got from Sad But True.
They do
Until It Sleeps, or whatever it's called.
You do get the sense that they're always trying to find something slightly different, like Saint Anger. Yeah, it sounds terrible, but they're looking to do something different. Yeah, but the reason it sounds terrible is because they're trying to influence the industry, because they are quite influential.
They're very, very influential.
Yeah, and they're trying to feed that. Not so much on Death Magnetic. It seems more of a
back to thrash.
Yeah, get it in. And modern Metallica seems to be pining for something that they think they've lost. But I think there are things that we've got to remember about this album that there are positives. It's just not the quality of the music.
Yeah, the songs.
Yeah.
The songs on there. They could have been there. I've no problem with
Yeah.
the concept. It's just forgettable.
Yeah.
Why did they choose those songs? Why does it have to be so long?
I mean, it shows that probably their best album following the Black Album was Garaging, which was a...
Yeah, because it's got the
Covers
best songs
album.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell you what, Use Your Illusion is far and away better. Far and away.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Guns N' Roses fan. In fact, genre-wise, I would go for Metallica, but
Yeah,
it's just got better
songs. There are songs on Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. It just...
loads of great
They didn't
songs.
need 2 albums, and they didn't need you to play, pay twice.
Yeah. Right, so does it go in or not? That's the question. I definitely think it does.
Because of the paucity. Well, no, not the paucity. Yeah, it should go in. It should go in because...
They're capable of more.
Load must go into room 101.
Yeah, they are capable.
The next album is Dream Theater Falling into Infinity. Yeah, this is their sellout album. Now, this Dream Theater in the 90s is not a happy story in a way, in that they started off the 90s with nothing. They had their big album, prog album, structured, complex music, and supposedly unfashionable music that turned out to be successful. And I think the problem lay in the fact that they had an MTV hit. For whatever reason, Pull Me Under was played on MTV. It was just a mistake, really. It shouldn't have been the case, and I think for that reason there was that push by the Suits to get them to change their music. They did another album after Images and Words that was Awake, which is really heavy, really good album. It didn't have that big splash, and it wouldn't. There's no reason why it would, and I think that so that from the Suits' perspective, that meant you need to go in a more commercial direction. You need to shorten the songs. You need to make things simpler. You can still do stuff, but you've got to tie it down a bit, and it's got to sound more contemporary. So they did. They said, okay, let's do that. Let's see if it sells loads. Didn't sell loads. Didn't make any difference to sales whatsoever. The same. And it's a boring album, I think. There are fans of it, but I think it's one of their weakest.
Yeah, I mean, Dream Theater are another one of those bands, a bit like Metallica, which are big for no good reason other than that they work hard. So
Yeah,
they
right
tour a
time,
lot,
yeah.
and they write lots of, well, in Dream Theater's case, they write lots of albums and lots of music. I'm not a massive Dream Theater fan. I like some of the stuff. Octavarium, obviously. I listened to it. It didn't sound too bad. It sounded like they toned down the concept slightly. The thing with Dream Theater, it seems a lot of concepts going on, a lot of a lot of things all happening at the same time, and it feels like they've diluted that a little bit, which is great if that lets you focus in on a concept.
Yeah.
But this doesn't feel particularly focused.
It's actually a lot like the Metallica situation. They had tons of songs and they had half an album there that they didn't use.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was Mike Portnoy actually put his foot down and said, "No, that's enough of that. Didn't work. Now we do proper prog stuff." And he was right. And the next 4 albums were this sublime, ultimate Dream Theater selection.
So obviously, without this album, that couldn't have happened.
That's true.
And that's Dream Theater's best bit of the run after this is Dream Theater's best period.
Yeah.
Music wise, so I think to put this in room 101 might be a bit of a mistake.
I mean, it's something really. It was only from having to do load as well. There's a song there called Peruvian Skies, which I think is a good song. It's a kind of diet Dream Theater, but it works really well. It's less than 7 minutes, and there's a real Metallica-iness in there. And when they played it live, they actually cut into Have a Cigar actually, but at the end they cut into Enter Sandman, because the riff is so much like Enter Sandman. But it really struck me, some of it. I think the Suits had heard Load. Load was huge, therefore you need to sound like Load. Whereas actually Load was huge because of the Black Album, actually, not because Load was any good. And I think that was the reason. They wanted Dream Theater to go in the same direction as Metallica. I think that was part of it. But yeah, there's some good stuff on there. It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, you don't put things in room 101 because the music's rubbish on there. You got to, the context is important.
Yeah.
Because you're erasing it from history. Yeah, and if you erase this album from history, I think you change things.
Yeah. No scenes from a memory and etc.
So I still don't think it should go in room 101.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, I think it's a no.
I decree that Falling into Infinity must not go into room 101.
Next on the agenda, I have another sellout album. The theme is sellout albums mostly, and this one is Peter Gabriel. So, obviously the last album we reviewed was the third one from 1980. We're now in 1986. We only did one album in between. But he's also doing the WOMAD Festival, and then there was financial problems with that, and he had to do a Genesis reunion concert, which was a disaster actually. Although people like it, it was a mess. And I think he must have seen, hang on a minute, I need to make lots of money here to fund this stuff. There's an advantage in having successful albums, so he made a really commissioned album. It's the sellout album. It goes with Invisible Touch, or 90125, or Let's Dance, and all those sellout albums. In Through the Outdoor, I suppose, in a way. But this one's really good. That's the difference. For whatever reason, Peter Gabriel was really good at it. I'll tell you what I think the theme is, though. These albums are often really good. It's what happens afterwards. And it's like selling out destroys their muse. It certainly happened to Yes. And it happened to Peter Gabriel as well. I think he came back. I don't like the period after So. The period after So is what people remember. And people think, that's a bit bland and 80s. But So is a great album, I think.
I think we have to take a particularly hard line on 80s sellout albums by previously great artists, because art suffered.
As a result of the 80s.
Yeah, as a result of the 80s. The cashing in, the cynical approach to making music. We've not recovered.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
I like Peter Gabriel. I loved his. He was a particularly arty singer. He brought a real artist sort of approach to his music and the performance in Genesis particularly, but all around, even his solo stuff.
Yeah.
So we need to be pretty hard.
Ha! So by Peter Gabriel must go into room 101.
Oh no!
The machine's made its mind up. It should go in.
Oh well. There you go. The machine agreed. We didn't have to need to ask Hector. The next album. We're not doing 90125. I think it'd be much more interesting to talk about Tormato. I was a bit wary of doing this because obviously Chris Squire has left us. So it'd be incredibly crass for us to do a load of Yes albums that we liked and then wait for him to die and then talk about a bad one. But actually, I think the only good thing about this album actually is the bass playing and his song on there, Onward, which is a really nice song actually, and nothing like the rest of the album. They all, the band complain about the mix. I think they're just rubbish songs as well, and I think it's the sound of the band as well. It's just mushy. There's no focus. It all went wrong, and they were supposed to be called Yes Tour, like the Hills, which you can see in the inlay. It's all map lines. But just a real sign of what was happening from Hypnosis. The guys threw a tomato at the cover because it was so bad. So it's called Tormato, which really reflects the music. I think it's a horrible album. Onward is great. That's it. It's just the whole. It's like Yes has gone wrong. It's like somehow they just followed a path, and Going for the One is a great album, but somehow they went into this horrible, tasteless feel of grating songs that just aren't cohesive, aren't focused, and What do you think?
I don't get that, Kev.
Really?
Do I listen to this. I don't really get Yes. It just sounds like all the other Yes.
I suppose it is generic Yes in a way.
Yeah, and if you're going to put this in room 101, why aren't you putting the rest of Yes in room 101? That's my point. That would be my point. If this deserves to go in room 101, then Yes deserves to go in room 101, and there's no way you're putting Yes in room 101.
No, you can't put Going for the One in a relay or something, can you? Because they're brilliant.
It's just John Anderson saying lots and lots and lots of
words.
Meaningless words, like
Symphony of a Prayer.
Yeah, that's my thought. Is if you're going to put this in, you've got to put Yes in.
Tormato. Well, because of the awesomeness of Chris Squire, it can't go into room 101.
Does that mean we can't put Tormato into 101? That's probably the worst album we're doing. Next album is Never Say Die by Black Sabbath. We've done quite a few Black Sabbath albums. And this is an interesting one. this is the end of the Aussie era. Everything had fallen apart. They're past the point where they went to the studio and waited for Tony Iommi to... Although they all went to the pub while Tony Iommi tried to come up with a riff. Tony Iommi locked himself in his room with his cocaine, and they waited for him to decide what they were going to do. They spent a lot of time recording this album, and it is all over the place. And it really moves from sublime to comedy bad. I mean, that far in some of their best music to hilarious rubbish. I think. I mean, it's a bizarre album. Some people love this album because there is good stuff on there, but it is a mess. It is a mess of an album.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that should go in Room 101 just because it's rubbish. You know, Black Sabbath are famous for awesome riffs, moody music, and not jazzy rubbish.
Well, my favourite bit, there's Breakout. What it was, Ozzy had left, and they got this guy from Savoy Brown or whatever it was, and I think he might have been in Fleetwood Mac briefly, and they're making a very different style of music, and Ozzy wouldn't sing that stuff. So the one song they didn't tell him, and that was actually Junior's Eyes, although it's been rearranged quite a bit. There was another thing called Breakout, and they just got some sax player to come in and go da 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 da, and it's just so funny. It's just wrong. And then the final track is Swinging the Chain, so Bill Ward had to sing that because Ozzy wouldn't sing it. It's just, oh my god, what are you doing? But it starts really well. The first 3 songs are brilliant.
Yeah, alright. It's not Black Sabbath level though, is it?
No.
I think you could safely erase this from Black Sabbath and...
It wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter.
True. That's true.
Never say die. Let it go into Room 101 and die.
There it goes. Next on the agenda. Actually, I was saying Tormato was the worst album we're going to do, but Love Beach by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Look at the cover. Look at it. There they are, with their chests out like the Bee Gees. What? What were they thinking? Now, what's really strange is it's Works 2 and this, which are the ones that get slagged off. They were the contractual whatever. Works 2 was leftover stuff, and I really like Works 2 actually. I think it's great. This, obviously, they were told by Armato's again, go into a studio. You can go where you like. You can go to the Bahamas or whatever you want. Go to a studio, record some short songs, and we'll sell them. Sell out. So Greg Lake wrote his awful songs, and they tried to write a structured thing. I think it's terrible. And the irony is, of course, on Works 2 is an outtake from Brain Salad Surgery called In the Windmills of Your Mind I'll Be Your Valentine or something like that. Oh no, When the Windmills Blossom in the whatever it is. That was a comedy title for a jazzy fusiony thing. These songs could actually have that title. You know, I mean, they're just dreary. What happened to Greg Lake? Where did he go wrong? The other side has this extended piece, and it's pretty forgettable, to be honest. I mean, they just weren't interested, apparently. That's what it was. And they all just went home and left someone else to mix it or something, I think. It wasn't like really finished, they just went home. I think it's a definite wrong 101. I think it's horrible. It doesn't even sound like ELP.
I have to admit, I feel kind of a bit strange touching it. This album reeks of Old Spice.
Yeah.
There's this theme of you know, the first lot of songs are quite... Well, put it this way. If I was a lady... And I went into a man's apartment and I saw this on the record player, I'd run a mile because there's something very...
Have they got medallions? They might have medallions.
Possibly, yeah. You can imagine someone listening to this sort of looking in the mirror, giving themselves the eye, you know, sort of eyes.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah.
You know, the barbarian.
And I thought, you know, on listening, I thought, wow, this is just a load of crap so they can get to Canario, which actually sounds a bit ELP-ish.
Yeah.
And the Memoirs of an Officer and a Gentleman, again, sounds a bit ELP-ish.
He's using his Yamaha, whatever it's called, though, unfortunately, which doesn't sound very nice.
No, it is...
Not as good as the Moog.
Slightly creepy, though.
That's the understatement. I think it's a definite 101.
In it goes.
Yeah.
And it goes.
And finally, what are we going to do next? That's right, it's Abbey Road. So yeah, Abbey Road. What do you think of Abbey Road?
It's my #1 favourite album of all time.
I don't know whether it's mine or not, but it's definitely... If I had top 10 albums ever, it would definitely be in that 10. Definitely. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Much the same style as Rubber Soul and Revolver, but much slicker. You know, George Martin had figured out how to switch all the switches or something. I don't know. Or the technology had moved on maybe. Revolver and Rubber Soul were very rough around the edges. I mean, people don't always recognise this. You know, things like and Your Bird Can Sing, the rhythm guitar, John Lennon, when he's going ching ching ching, it's not in time. You know, which well, obviously people it gives it a charm. People like that. This is the slick, perfect Beatles album. It has everything. Favourite track?
God. Well, actually, I listen to it as one track. Basically, it's very difficult to pull one out. I like the "You Never Give Me My Money," "You Never Give Me Your Money" sort of thing. That's really nice. But then that works as a thing with everything else.
Yeah.
Maybe because or "Here Comes the Sun." They're just.
The reason I ask is because I've got an answer, and that people say, "What's your favourite Beatles song?" I say because it's got the essence of Beatlesness in it, and that sort of kind of covers the whole second half of their career, I think, and that's why I really like because there's also the a cappella version, which is fantastic as well, and it showed they could still really sing when they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a note out of place on this album.
Yeah,
all the way to Her Majesty.
The funny thing is, it's not universal like we see it. I think certainly at the time it was seen as a bit of a dark album, a kind of.
Well, there are definite dark tones. I mean, Maxwell Silver Hammer. It's incredibly dark.
It is, yeah, and it's actually one of the. That's one of the fillers. That and Oh Darling are the fillers, and maybe Octopus's Garden, but they're all great.
But that gives it makes it interesting. You know,
it's got a bit of everything, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think between us that would have to be the album, wouldn't it? I mean, we couldn't choose Dark Side or The Wall, so we couldn't. You know, so that's the one. So it definitely doesn't go in there. Please don't. I mean, obviously people talk about Sgt. Pepper, but I think Sgt. Pepper was more about the time they did it.
Yeah. That encapsulated a time, didn't it?
Yeah.
An important.
And this didn't, of course, because it was after they split up. So, you know, it was the last album, although Let It Be came out afterwards. This was the last album, really. They all got together and behaved as best they could because they kind of knew it was the end. So, best album. There you go.
Yeah.
Abbey Road definitely can't go into room 101. It's just bloody awesome.
We'll see you next week.
Quite a long episode, this one, but...
Yeah, hopefully we'll cut it a bit, but you'll know. See you next week.